I have the pleasure of introducing Brittain, who is a PACE senior. She does cheerleading, and she runs her own Women Mentoring Women's Club. So without further introduction from me, please help me welcome Brittain Meadows.
Do you hear that? Not the rustling of clothes, not the hum of the lights. I mean the quiet beneath it all. The kind that presses against your chest, that lives in your lungs, that says everything you don't. Listen closely. The silence is speaking. I've grown close with that silence intimately. In fact, I spent years collecting it. Now, some people may collect your artifacts like paintings, clothes, or cars. I collect silences, the moments in between. And like those rare artifacts, they are not worthless scraps. They are pieces of my life, carefully preserved and full of meaning. It's not the kind of collection that sits behind glass and gathers dust. My museum is full of things I've never said. There are no marble statues, there are no gold-framed portraits. My museum is full of forgotten conversations, missed opportunities, and paths I didn't take. Some rooms in my museum are filled with the unspoken words of my childhood, how I learned to shrink myself to fit into spaces I knew I was supposed to occupy. I can still hear the silence of the classroom, how my voice seemed to get lost in the crowd, how my hands stayed small, how I stayed small. And then there's a hallway I passed through quickly, eyes forward, shoulders tight, because that hallway is where I learned that silence could put more distance between myself and people I thought I knew faster and better than any loud word or barrier ever could. It's in the moments when I stood in spaces I knew were not built for me, how I learned to navigate the silences of others' expectations. And sometimes their silence felt like a loud question no one ever dared to ask directly, but always left lingering in the air. Should I speak? Do I belong here? Should I stay? But silence is not neutral, not for some of us, and most certainly not for me. For me, it is safety. For me, it is strategy. For me, silence is survival. But it is also suffocation. Because when you grow up quiet in a world that demands you to speak, people don't just mishear you. They build a version of yourself that never had the chance to speak, to express themselves, to be. For now, all that I ask is that you walk with me, that you step into this archive of unsaid things, not just to see what is here, but to feel what isn't. Because the story is not just mine, it is all of ours, about the silences that we all carry, about the ghosts of people we've almost become. So please, listen closely. The silence is speaking. If we step into this first hall of my museum, you won't see me speaking or talking, you'll see me listening. Growing up Black, silence was never just silence for me. It was protection. And because being Black, my presence was already loud, my skin often spoke before I did. It said different, it said watch her, it said prove yourself. And when the world is already listening for the wrong things, sometimes you learn to give it nothing at all. So I let silence become my armor. When relatives told me to be respectful, they weren't just saying to be polite, they meant be careful. Careful not to be seen as angry when I was only tired, careful not to be seen as defiant when I was only asking why, and careful not to confirm the stereotypes that had already been put in place for me before I even had the chance to grow into them. So I swallowed my words. I learned to nod instead of argue, to observe instead of interrupt, to keep my face still when my heart was loud. But my quiet and my silence were not emptiness, and they were not weakness. They were the only safe languages I had ever learned. But the cost of silence is heavy. Because the more you hold your breath, the more the world decides who you are without you ever opening your mouth. And I learned young that when you are Black, the world often fills it with all the wrong things about you. Step into this next hall, and you'll immediately notice that it's the largest room in my museum. The walls stretch wide, the ceilings loom high, yet somehow it feels the most unfinished. This is the gallery of almost, the exhibit of could-have-beens, the room of unfinished portraits. The figures here are nearly whole, colors half-filled, faces sketched, brushstrokes frozen mid-motion. But they're not strangers. They're versions of myself that I've lost due to silence. But not just the silence of words unspoken, but of decisions delayed and risks untaken until the moment passed. In one corner, there's a version of me who applied for a scholarship application instead of letting it sit in her drafts. Her frame overflows with possibilities stretching far beyond the edges, but her portrait is sketched, unfinished, in pencil. And then further down the corridor, the collection grows. There's a version of me who applied for the ICGL Counts last year, who didn't let self-doubt or second-guessing silence her ambition. Her canvas is in motion, mid-speech, mid-leadership. These portraits are alive with tension and with hope. Maybe she would have failed, maybe she would have succeeded, maybe she wouldn't have. Either way, she would have existed. And then there's a girl who tried, who spoke up, who rose her hand. And at the center of it all is the girl who didn't. Every line is cautious. She is composed but hollow, finished but flat. As we walk around my museum, we now enter the final room. But something's different. It's quieter here, but not because nothing is happening, but because something is. This is where I am now. The walls are still unfinished, the exhibits are still evolving, but there's movement here. There's color and intention. This is where I started shaping my own silences, not by erasing them, but by filling them. It's in this room that I'm learning that silence does not have to be a void, it can be a canvas. In one corner, you'll see my certificate for top 16 teams at the International Harvard Debate Tournament. It hangs among a recording of my keynote introduction speech from my graduation gala. That plays with my countless honorable mentions and awards for writing, and they hang among my stole from my graduation from the Veritas School of Social Sciences. Here, my awards, my speeches, my achievements, yes, they hang among the portraits, but they are not the point. The point is action. The point is choice. The point is courage. The point is knowing that the galleries behind us are finished, but the ones ahead of us are still ours to shape. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, silence may shape me, it may shape us, but it's up to us to decide what we get to do with it. So before I end, I want to admit something. I almost didn't submit to speak here because public speaking terrifies me, as you can probably tell and hear, and the way my voice shakes and speeds up because I get nervous. But standing here now, in this room of action, of voice, of choice, I'm realizing that it all began with that one decision, to press submit on that purple Google form that Mr. Kaufman sent. And that is exactly the point. The smallest choices can open the doors to the rooms that we are meant to fill. So here's what I leave you with. Don't underestimate the quiet, but do not be confined by it either. Let it be where you listen, let it be where you learn, but above all, let it be where you begin. Don't let your life become a museum exhibit of almost, a gallery of unfinished portraits, a room of could-have-beens. Speak, choose, act, press submit, take the risk, dare. And please, listen closely. The silence is speaking. The question is, will you respond?